General Vexthor stood on the command bridge of his flagship, mandibles clicking in amusement as he studied the small human vessel through the tactical display. His fleet of 30 warships had effectively surrounded the lone craft, their weapons primed and ready to unleash devastation at his command. The human's predicament was almost laughably hopeless. "Correction battle fleet to Earth vessel," he broadcasted, his translator converting his clicks and chirps into standard galactic common. "You have entered disputed territory. Surrender immediately or face annihilation." He paused, savoring the moment. "You have 30 seconds to comply." The response came not in words, but in the form of a visual transmission. The bridge crew fell silent as the image materialized. A single human female in what appeared to be woefully inadequate combat armor. She was checking something on her wrist display with casual indifference, as though she were waiting for public transportation rather than facing imminent destruction. "Interesting timing," the human said, her voice carrying an almost cheerful tone that sent an involuntary shiver down Vexthor's dorsal plates. "I was just about to contact your fleet." She glanced up from her chronometer, dark eyes scanning the bridge crew through the video feed. "I'm Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Force. You're currently violating 3 separate peace treaties by maintaining military presence in this sector. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw." Laughter erupted across the bridge, a cacophony of clicking mandibles and vibrating thoraxes. Even Vexthor's ceremonial armor quivered with mirth. "Perhaps your translation matrix is malfunctioning, human. You face the combined might of the 7th Coraxian battle fleet, 30 ships, over 15,000 warriors. And you," he paused for dramatic effect, "are alone." Sarah's expression remained unchanged. "I'm aware of your numbers, General. I'm also aware that your species evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal predator presence. Your warriors have never faced a Deathworlder in combat." She tapped something on her wrist display. "For reference, I've just transmitted our standard first contact package. Page 47 contains relevant information about human physiology and Earth's gravity. I'd strongly suggest reviewing it." Vexthor's second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zixtel, quickly scanned the transmitted data. His antenna twitched. "Sir, these readings, they can't be accurate. The gravity alone would crush our strongest warriors. And the atmospheric pressure. Obvious propaganda." Vexthor dismissed with a wave of his primary appendage. No species could evolve under such conditions. He turned his attention back to the human. "Your attempts at intimidation are noted, Lieutenant Chen. They are also futile. Prepare to be boarded. We will make an example of you for all who dare to challenge Coraxian authority in this sector." Sarah sighed, the sound carrying a weight that momentarily gave even Vexthor pause. "You know," she said, removing her helmet to reveal close-cropped black hair and features set in an expression of resigned determination, "I was really hoping to resolve this diplomatically. I hate doing paperwork after these encounters." She set the helmet aside and began running what appeared to be diagnostic checks on her armor's joints. "For the record, General, I'm officially informing you that any aggressive action against this vessel will be considered an act of war. Your force composition and capabilities have been logged. Last chance to withdraw." The bridge crew's laughter this time held a nervous edge. Something about the human's calm demeanor had begun to unsettle them. Vexthor squashed his own momentary unease. No single warrior, regardless of their planet of origin, could stand against the might of his fleet. "Deploy boarding parties," he commanded. "Let's show this Deathworlder why the Coraxian Empire dominates 3 spiral arms." As the first wave of boarding pods launched toward her ship, Sarah Chen's lips curved into what humans called a smile. The expression sent cold fear through every Coraxian who witnessed it. It was the look of a predator who had just watched its prey walk willingly into a trap. "Well then," she said softly, cracking her knuckles, "let's get to work." The first boarding pod breached Sarah's ship with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Coraxian warriors poured through the opening, their chitinous armor gleaming under emergency lighting. Their helmet sensors swept the darkness, searching for their lone opponent. The ship's corridor stretched before them, empty and silent. "Contact on lower deck," the squad leader announced, mandibles clacking with anticipation. Single heat signature, moving slow, almost sluggish. The high gravity must be affecting the Deathworlder. A quiet chuckle echoed through the ship's corridors, making several warriors twitch. "You know what's fascinating about human history?" Sarah's voice came through their comm systems, impossibly calm. "We've been fighting in enclosed spaces since we lived in caves. Corridors, tunnels, urban warfare. It's practically written into our DNA." The squad leader raised his plasma rifle. "Spread out, standard breach formation. The human is trying to." His words cut off as a dark shape dropped from a maintenance shaft above. Sarah landed in the middle of the squad, her movements a blur of lethal efficiency. The first warrior fell before their neural networks could process her presence, her armor-augmented fist punching through their supposedly impenetrable carapace. "Impossible!" shrieked a rear-guard soldier, bringing his weapon to bear. "Our armor is rated 4. Sarah pivoted, using the falling body of his comrade as a shield while closing the distance. The Quaraxian managed to fire once, the plasma bolt dissipating harmlessly against his fallen companion's armor. Then the human was on him, her movements expressing a terrible grace that their combat computers struggled to analyze. "Basic physics," Sarah explained, her voice never losing its conversational tone as she disarmed the warrior and used his own weapon to disable 2 more. "Earth gravity is 3 times what you're used to. Every human movement carries more force than your armor was designed to withstand." On the flagship's bridge, General Vexthor watched in growing horror as the feed from his boarding party dissolved into chaos. "Send in the second wave. All units, converge on." "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, antenna vibrating with distress. "Second wave reports the human is somehow already in their section. But that's impossible. She was just." The video feeds showed Sarah moving through the Quaraxian, ranks like water through cracks. Where they expected to find a sluggish heavy worlder, they instead faced a predator who seemed to occupy multiple spaces simultaneously. Their rigid combat doctrines crumbled against an opponent who moved with fluid unpredictability. "Your strategy is admirable," Sarah commented, her voice broadcasting across all frequencies as she systematically dismantled another squad. "Overwhelming force, multiple angles of attack. It would work perfectly against opponents who fight like you do." The sickening crunch of breaking carapace punctuated her words. "But humans? We're ambush predators by nature. You've just given me more opportunities to strike from the shadows." A desperate warrior charged with his shock staff, hoping to overwhelm her with pure aggression. Sarah slipped inside his guard, her movements economical and precise. "See, that's the difference," she said, using his own momentum to throw him into his companions. "You evolved for direct confrontation. We evolved to analyze, adapt, and overcome." The Quaraxian soldiers watched in disbelief as she turned their own defensive formations into killing grounds. Their overlapping fields of fire became corridors of chaos as she moved between them, using their crossfire to devastating effect. Every piece of cover they sought became a launch point for her next attack. Back on the bridge, Vexthor's mandibles trembled as he watched the tactical display. In less than 5 minutes, the human had neutralized 2 full boarding parties, over 60 of his best warriors. Not killed, he realized with dawning horror, but disabled with surgical precision. She was sending a message. "All units, fall back to defensive positions," he commanded, his voice cracking. "Seal all bulkheads. Don't let her." The bridge lights flickered once, then died. When they came back online seconds later, Sarah Chen stood in their midst, holding a captured shock staff with casual expertise. "Now then," she said, offering that predatory smile again. "Shall we discuss those peace treaties?" The command bridge erupted into chaos. Elite guards rushed to protect General Vexthor, their weapons trained on the lone human who had impossibly breached their defenses. Sarah casually twirled the captured shock staff, her movements drawing nervous clicks from the surrounding warriors. "Fascinating design," she commented, examining the weapon. "Electrical discharge, neural disruptor, and kinetic amplifier all in one. Mind if I keep it? Our engineers would love to study this." "Kill her!" Vex Thor shrieked, his composure shattered. "All units, converge on the bridge." Sarah's expression shifted, and the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. "You know what makes humans particularly dangerous, General." She activated her armor's external speakers, broadcasting across all frequencies. "We don't just fight. We hunt." A primal sound filled the ship's corridors, a low, rhythmic humming that built into what the Coraxians would later describe as war singing. The human's voice carried ancient words in a language that predated spaceflight, each syllable resonating with millennia of combat evolution. "That's a war chant," Sarah explained, even as she deflected plasma fire with her borrowed staff. "From a tribe of Earth warriors called the Maori. They used it to trigger their body's combat responses. See, humans don't just have fight or flight instincts. We have something called flow state." The bridge guards watched in horror as her movements became even faster, more fluid. Where before she had been lethal, now she was transcendent. Their sensors showed her neural activity increasing, her muscle density somehow growing denser. "The longer we fight," she continued, disarming 3 guards with a combination of moves that their combat computers failed to analyze, "the stronger we become." Adrenaline, endorphins, norepinephrine. Our bodies produce combat drugs naturally. We literally evolve during battle. Reinforcements poured through the bridge doors, only to find themselves facing an opponent who seemed to anticipate their every move. Sarah flowed through their ranks like water, each strike precisely calculated to disable rather than kill. The Coraxians' rigid combat protocols proved useless against an enemy who adapted faster than their tactical AIs could compute. "Maximum efficiency," Sarah narrated, her voice carrying an almost educational tone, as she systematically dismantled their defense. "Humans learn to conserve energy during pursuit hunts. Every movement serves multiple purposes." She demonstrated by using one warrior's momentum to disable 3 others. "Your technology is impressive, but our bodies have been optimizing for combat since we learned to walk upright." Vex Thor watched in mute horror as his elite guards fell. The human moved with impossible precision, her strikes targeting weak points in their armor that their own designers hadn't considered. More disturbing was her increasing speed. She seemed to be growing stronger as the battle continued. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, mandibles trembling. "Her biological readings. They're off the scale. Core temperature rising, muscle density increasing, neural activity accelerating. It's like she's evolving." Sarah finished for him, suddenly standing beside their console. "Humans call it getting in the zone. Our bodies adapt to challenges in real time. The longer you fight us, the more we learn, the stronger we become." A squad of heavy weapons specialists burst onto the bridge, leveling their artillery-grade plasma cannons. Sarah's smile widened. "Perfect timing," she said, dropping into a stance that none of their combat databases recognized. "I was just about to demonstrate why humans excel at weapons adaptation. Your engineering is excellent, by the way. Very intuitive design philosophy." The next 30 seconds redefined combat possibilities for every Coraxian who witnessed them. Sarah didn't just evade their weapons. She captured them, mastered them, and demonstrated capabilities their creators had never imagined. Each movement flowed into the next with terrible precision, her body moving with an efficiency that made their most advanced battle automata look clumsy. When it ended, she stood amid a field of disabled warriors, holding a heavy plasma cannon as if it were designed for human use. The war chant still echoed through the ship's corridors, now carrying a weight of prophecy that chilled even the bravest Coraxian's heart. "Now then," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with predatory focus, "shall we discuss the difference between sapient species and apex predators?" The Coraxian command structure was unraveling. Through encrypted channels, Frantic reports flooded in from all sections of the fleet. The human wasn't just fighting. She was conducting a masterclass in psychological warfare. Section Delta compromised. She's in the ventilation systems. No, she's in the cargo hold. Impossible. We just saw her in engineering. Sub-Commander Zixtal studied the tactical displays with growing dread. Their sensors tracked Sarah Chen's heat signature appearing in multiple locations almost simultaneously. Either their systems were malfunctioning, or she's using our own ship designs against us, he realized, mandibles clicking in distress. The maintenance tunnels, service corridors, emergency routes, she's memorized them all. But when? How? As if answering his question, Sarah's voice echoed through the command channel. Standard Koraxian battle cruiser, Horizon class. 742 access points, 12 major maintenance hubs, and 23 emergency shortcuts between decks. She paused, and they could hear the smile in her voice. I memorized your ship schematics during first contact preparations. Humans are really good at spotting patterns. A massive explosion rocked the fleet's third support vessel. Not destruction, but precisely calculated chaos. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping entire squadrons in their quarters. Life support systems reconfigured themselves, creating zones of low oxygen that the Koraxians couldn't navigate, but a human could endure. Your ships are remarkably consistent, Sarah continued her impromptu lecture. Efficient design, logical layout, perfect for coordinated military operations. Another explosion, another series of trapped squads. Unfortunately, that predictability becomes a weakness when facing an adaptive predator. General Vexthor, now coordinating from an emergency command post, watched helplessly as his fleet's carefully planned defensive formations crumbled. How? He demanded. How is one human dismantling our entire battle strategy? Because you're still thinking in terms of traditional warfare, Sarah replied, having apparently hacked their supposedly secure channel. Humans? We think in terms of hunting grounds. The tactical display told a horrifying story. She was using their own ships as weapons against them, herding entire squadrons into kill zones. The narrow corridors, designed for efficient movement of troops, became death traps. Every attempt to corner her only resulted in more trapped soldiers. In Earth's history, Sarah narrated as she worked, we developed something called guerrilla warfare. Small forces defeating larger ones by controlling the environment. A squad of elite warriors found themselves sealed in a cargo bay, atmosphere venting slowly. We learned to turn enemy strengths into weaknesses. Zixtal watched in fascination and horror as she demonstrated humanity's mastery of asymmetric warfare. Their superior numbers became a liability in the confined spaces. Their advanced weapons, designed for open combat, proved unwieldy in close quarters. Even their armor, optimized for maximum protection, slowed them down in the very corridors she navigated with predatory grace. You know what's really interesting about human combat evolution? Sarah's voice carried through the ship as she systematically isolated and neutralized their remaining forces. We developed tools used specifically to overcome stronger opponents. Every human child learns this instinctively through play. We call it improvising. As if to demonstrate, she began using their own equipment in ways the designers never intended. Emergency fire suppression systems became smoke screens. Maintenance drones became reconnaissance tools. Even the ship's artificial gravity became a weapon in her hands as she manipulated it section by section, leaving Koraxian warriors struggling while she moved freely. Sir, one of the few remaining tactical officers reported, his voice quivering. Our combat analysis computers have crashed. They can't predict her next move. There's no pattern to analyze. She's rewriting combat protocols faster than we can adapt. General Vexthor, watching his fleet's systematic dismantling, finally understood their crucial mistake. They had prepared to fight a soldier, training their warriors according to millions of years of Koraxian military doctrine. Instead, they faced something their species had never evolved to combat. A true apex predator, unleashed in an environment she had already claimed as her hunting ground. And she wasn't finished yet. Begin emergency biological analysis. General Vexthor commanded from the Auxiliary Control Center. I want to know everything about human physiology. There must be a weakness. The science officer's claws danced across holographic displays as combat sensors focused on Sarah Chen. The readings made his antenna curl in disbelief. Sir, her skeletal structure. It's denser than our hull plating. And these muscle fibers, they're regenerating damage in real time. Through the ship's cameras, they watched Sarah lift a sealed pressure door that would normally require mechanical assistance. Her armor's servos whined, not from strain, but from trying to keep up with her natural movements. That's the interesting thing about Deathworld evolution, Sarah commented, apparently aware of their scans. Earth's gravity alone kills most species that try to land there. We developed these bodies just to survive daily life. She paused to disable another squad with precise strikes to nerve clusters their medical databases hadn't even identified. This isn't even peak human performance. The science officer's report continued, each detail more terrifying than the last. Her cardiovascular system is processing toxins faster than our strongest sedatives. Cellular repair is operating at levels we thought theoretically impossible. And her neural reactions. Sir, she's processing information faster than our combat computers. Sarah's voice carried a note of academic interest. Humans call it battle focus. Our bodies evolved to enter heightened states during conflict. Enhanced perception, accelerated healing, increased strength, basic survival traits on Earth. A brave squadron commander managed to land a glancing blow with a neural disruptor. The energy charge that should have paralyzed any living being merely caused Sarah to roll her shoulders. Interesting design, she noted, examining the weapon she quickly captured. But Earth's wildlife produces stronger electrical charges. We evolved natural resistance millennia ago. She demonstrated by using the disruptor at half its normal power, still enough to incapacitate the Koraxian warriors. Your weapons are calibrated for civilized species. Unfortunately, I'm from a planet that never got that memo. The medical officer burst into the command center, waving a data tablet frantically. The biological weapon. He chittered. We can deploy the experimental toxin designed for carbon-based life. Vexthor hesitated only briefly before giving the order. Sterilization protocols activated throughout the ship, releasing a weaponized compound that would break down organic matter at the cellular level. They watched Sarah pause as her armor sensors detected the change in air composition. Oh, she said, sounding almost disappointed. Biological warfare. That's actually pretty cute. She removed her helmet, causing several officers to cry out in alarm. Let me tell you about Earth's microorganisms. The science officer's mandibles clattered in shock as his instruments analyzed her response to the toxin. Impossible. Her immune system it's attacking our weapon at the molecular level, converting it into protein chains. Earth bacteria would consider this a light snack, Sarah explained. Continuing her advance, human children encounter more dangerous microbes in preschool. Our immune systems evolved to fight things that dissolve steel. By age 5, we've survived diseases that would sterilize most worlds. The medical officer slumped in defeat. Sir, her body isn't just resistant. It's using our weapon as fuel. Each exposure is making her stronger. Through the command center's viewport, they watched Sarah methodically work her way through their last lines of defense. Her movements had become even more fluid, more precise, as if the combat duration was enhancing rather than degrading her capabilities. The truly fascinating thing about human evolution, she continued, her voice carrying an almost professorial tone, is our adaptability. We don't just survive hostile environments. We thrive in them. Every challenge makes us stronger. The final defensive line crumbled as Sarah demonstrated exactly why humans had emerged as Earth's dominant species. Every weapon turned against her became a tool in her arsenal. Every obstacle became an opportunity. Every attempt to slow her down only seemed to fuel her advancement. General Vexthor, watching his last options evaporate, finally understood the true meaning of the term Deathworlder. They weren't fighting a soldier from a harsh planet. They were facing the apex predator of a world that had spent millions of years trying and failing to kill their species. And now that predator was hunting them. The Quaraxian fleet's command structure was in shambles. 3 hours into what should have been a simple operation, and their most hardened veterans were jumping at shadows. Sarah's voice had become a constant presence in their communications, a predator's purr that carried the weight of evolutionary terror. You know what humans find really interesting about space combat? Her voice echoed through every deck, every corridor. The silence reminds us of hunting at night. A pause, filled with the sound of measured breathing. Our ancestors did most of their killing in darkness. In the emergency command post, General Vexthor watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos. Entire sections of his ships were going dark, communication lost with hundreds of warriors at a time. The survivors' reports painted a horrifying picture. She's everywhere. No, she's nowhere. The shadows are moving. By the first queen. What is that sound? The sound in question was a low, rhythmic drumming that seemed to emanate from the ship's hull plating. It resonated at a frequency that made Quaraxian antennae vibrate uncomfortably, triggering primitive response patterns their species had evolved to warn of approaching predators. War drums, Sarah explained, her voice somehow both intimate and omnipresent. Humans use them to signal the start of battle. The rhythm matches the average heartbeat under stress. Psychological warfare is another evolutionary trait we picked up. The science officer's mandibles clattered nervously. Sir, she's modulating the ship's power systems to create the vibrations. But these patterns, they're affecting our warriors' neural networks, making them experience. He trailed off, antenna twitching. Fear, Sarah finished for him. Pure, primal fear. The kind your ancestors felt before they developed sapience. Before they built walls and weapons and spacecraft. The kind of fear prey feels when it knows it's being hunted. Security footage showed Sarah moving through the darkness with terrible purpose. Her armor's power system had been damaged in an earlier confrontation, but rather than hampering her, it seemed to have freed her. She moved like liquid shadow, each movement perfectly economical, guided by instincts honed over millions of years of predatory evolution. The fascinating thing about human combat psychology, she continued, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere, is how we combine primitive hunting instincts with advanced tactical thinking. For instance, the lights throughout the fleet began to flicker in a pattern that the tactical AI identified as a form of coded communication. But by the time they decoded one message, 3 more patterns had emerged. The Quaraxian warriors found themselves paralyzed with indecision, their highly structured combat protocols useless against an opponent who rewrote the rules of engagement with every passing moment. Pattern recognition, Sarah explained, as another squad fell to her synchronized attacks. Humans can process and adapt to new information while simultaneously acting on instinct. We don't need combat computers to calculate optimal strategies. We feel them. The drumming changed rhythm, becoming faster, more intense. Medical officers reported widespread panic among the troops as the sound triggered deeper, more primitive responses in their neural networks. It wasn't just noise. It was the voice of their evolutionary past, screaming warnings they could no longer consciously understand. Did you know? Sarah's voice came through personal communicators now, as if speaking to each warrior individually, that humans can go 3 days without sleep during combat. Our bodies produce natural stimulants. The longer we fight, the more focused we become. The more we learn, the more we evolve. General Vexthor watched his mighty fleet descend into chaos. Warriors who had faced death countless times were curling into defensive balls, their bodies responding to threat patterns encoded in their DNA. The human had turned their ships into a hunting ground, and their technology into weapons against them. Your warriors are brave, Sarah acknowledged, her voice carrying genuine respect. but they evolved for civilization, for order and hierarchy and protocol. A pause, filled with the sound of approaching footsteps. Humans, we never stopped being monsters. We just learned to think while we hunt. The drumming reached a crescendo, and in its rhythm, the Coraxians heard the approaching footsteps of their own extinction. "Deploy the Omega Protocol," General Vexthor commanded, his voice barely a whisper. "Authorization code. Terminal strike." Deep within the flagship's secure laboratories, sealed containers hissed open. The fruit of decades of biological research emerged, a weapon designed to target the fundamental building blocks of carbon-based life. Microscopic machines, programmed to disassemble organic matter at the molecular level, flooded through the ventilation systems. "Interesting choice." Sarah's voice came through their quantum-encrypted channels, somehow sounding even calmer than before. "You know what humans call this kind of attack." Tuesday morning on Earth. The science officer stared at his readings in disbelief. "Sir, the nanites, they're failing. Her immune system is treating them like a mild infection." Through the ship's cameras, they watched as Sarah deliberately removed her armor's breathing filters. She took a deep breath of the weapon-saturated air and actually smiled. "You should see what lives in the average human gut. Microscopic organisms that would eat your nanites for breakfast. We evolved alongside things that dissolve metal and digest radiation." The medical officer's data pad clattered to the floor. "Impossible. Her white blood cell count is increasing exponentially. The nanites aren't destroying her cells. They're being repurposed. Her body is learning from them." "Human immune systems are fascinating," Sarah explained, advancing through clouds of their supposedly lethal weapon. "We don't just fight infections. We adapt to them. Each exposure makes us stronger. Your weapon." She paused to disable another defensive position. "It's literally making me more resistant with every breath." The laboratory's emergency feeds showed the weapon's designers in various states of panic. Their greatest achievement, a culmination of Coraxian biological warfare, was being treated by their target as nothing more than a mild inconvenience. "Here's something your biological databases might find interesting," Sarah continued, her tone still casual despite the growing chaos around her. "The average human body contains more microorganisms than human cells. We're not just organisms, we're entire ecosystems. Your nanites, they just joined a war that's been raging in our bodies since before we invented fire." Vexthor watched in horror as their final weapon not only failed but backfired spectacularly. The human's vital signs showed increasing strength, her cellular structure actually incorporating elements of their attack into her biological defenses. "During Earth's history," Sarah narrated, systematically neutralizing their last defensive positions, "our planet tried to kill us with everything from microscopic predators to atmospheric poisons. Know what happened? We ate the poisons, made deals with the predators, turned our greatest threats into part of our biological arsenal." The science officer's readings became increasingly frantic. "Sir, her blood samples, they're showing accelerated evolution. Her immune system isn't just fighting our weapon, it's improving on its design. She's becoming more resistant to all forms of biological attack." Sarah's voice carried a note of genuine fascination. "You know what's really interesting about human biology? We're technically poisonous to most galactic life forms. Our blood contains enough iron to kill several species. Our saliva has antimicrobial properties that can dissolve alien tissue. Even our sweat contains compounds that would be considered biological weapons on some worlds." The last sealed laboratory fell silent as Sarah demonstrated exactly why Earth's biology was classified as a potential extinction-level threat to most spacefaring species. Her body wasn't just surviving their attack, it was thriving on it, using their most advanced biological warfare as a catalyst for further adaptation. "I feel like I should thank you," she commented, approaching the command center's final defenses. "This little experiment of yours has probably improved my immune system enough to handle at least 3 new types of alien pathogens. My medical officer is going to have a field day with the data. General Vexthor, watching their ultimate weapon become nothing more than an impromptu vaccination for their opponent, finally understood the true horror of facing a Deathworlder. They hadn't just failed to kill her, they had made her stronger. And she was about to demonstrate exactly what that meant. The footage spread across galactic communication networks like a viral infection, appropriate, given its content. Every major species watched in stunned silence as a single human systematically dismantled an entire battle fleet. The Galactic Council called an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. In the council chambers, the Coraxian representative faced a barrage of questions. The recordings from their fleet's final moments had shattered dozens of fundamental assumptions about combat doctrine and species classification. The human disabled 15,000 warriors without a single fatality, the Arxian speaker noted, their crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. Such precision while operating at that level of combat efficiency should be physiologically impossible. The response came not from the Coraxian representative, but from Earth's ambassador, who had been quietly watching the proceedings with an expression of mild amusement. Lieutenant Chen was actually showing remarkable restraint. She's not even ranked in the top tier of our combat specialists. Silence fell across the chamber as the implications sank in. Meanwhile, in the fleet's medical bay, Sarah Chen sat patiently as bewildered alien doctors studied her vital signs. The last 3 hours had fundamentally rewritten their understanding of biological adaptation. Her body had not only survived their most advanced weapons, but had emerged stronger, more resilient. Your cellular structure, one doctor chittered nervously, it's still evolving. The combat improvements, the adaptations to our weapons, they're permanent. Sarah nodded, checking something on her recovered helmet's display. Human biology is pretty efficient that way. We don't just survive challenges, we incorporate them. Your biological weapons actually helped upgrade my immune system. Thanks for that. By the way, General Vexthor, now under medical observation himself, watched her with a mixture of terror and fascination. Why? He finally asked. Why let us live? You could have eliminated our entire fleet. Because that wasn't the mission, Sarah replied simply. I was sent to demonstrate capability, not to destroy. Humans understand something fundamental about war. The best victories don't require killing. They require understanding. Across the galaxy, military academies scrambled to update their curricula. The footage of Sarah's demonstration became required studying, spawning entirely new fields of tactical analysis. But it wasn't just her combat prowess that caught their attention. It was the methodical way she had turned every Coraxian advantage into a weakness. The most dangerous thing about humans, a Centaurian professor explained to his students, isn't their physical capabilities. It's their ability to improvise, to adapt, to turn any situation to their advantage. They don't just survive, they evolve. Back in the medical bay, Sarah finished her report to Earth Command. The doctors had finally given up trying to understand how her body had not only survived, but thrived on their biological weapons. Some mysteries, they decided, were better left to evolution. One question, Vexthor said as she prepared to leave. The whole time, you were teaching, explaining. Why? Sarah smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't predatory. Because that's another thing humans evolved to do, share knowledge. Even in combat, we can't help but analyze, understand, and explain. It's as much a part of us as our physical adaptations. The impact of her lesson resonated through galactic society. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive Deathworlders now recognized them as something far more significant, living proof that evolution hadn't finished its work. Every attempt to defeat Sarah had only made her, and by extension humanity, stronger. As she finally boarded her ship for departure, Sarah sent one last message to the fleet's command center. By the way, that coffee I mentioned earlier, still waiting, and after all this exercise, I could really use a cup. The Galactic Council's final report on the incident contained only one definitive conclusion. In attempting to understand humanity, we must accept that they are not simply another spacefaring species. They are evolution's answer to the question, what happens when a predator learns not just to think, but to teach? The answer, as the Coraxian fleet had learned, was both beautiful and terrifying to behold.